And it doesn't just stop at gut feelings and dreams and premonitions and clairvoyance and inner visions and stuff. It extends out to the outer world, which is also an extension of your body.
Welcome to the Wisdom of the Body podcast. I'm your host, Heather Grzych. Here, we talk about the profound connection between mind, body, and spirit. Join me and other authors, wellness experts, and everyday individuals talk about the importance of listening to our bodies, trusting our guts, and living in deeper harmony with nature. So, whether you're seeking guidance on your wellness journey or simply looking for inspiration, you're in the right place. We're thrilled to be in the top 3% of podcasts globally. You can find the Wisdom of the Body podcast on Apple, Spotify, and most other places where people listen to podcasts. You can follow by joining my email list at heathergrzych.com or by following me on Instagram at Heather Grzych. That's Heather, Grzych. I know you're going to love this podcast, so take a second right now to subscribe. Today, I'm here with Happy Ali, is the author of the Intuition Bible, How and Why to Tap into Your Inner Wisdom, which we love to talk about here on the Wisdom of the Body podcast. And Happy has a BA degree in psychology from UCLA, and he's a prophetic dreamer, a certified master NLP practitioner, a certified master clinical hypnotherapist, and host of the Happy Insights podcast. Happy's spiritual journey began in 1995 when he dedicated his life to the exploration of metaphysical disciplines after a near-death experience, inspired a dramatic awakening. Now he teaches and shares the subconscious manifestation methodology that he created globally. He lives in Los Angeles, and you're going to get to meet him here today on the Wisdom of the Body podcast. And I'm so excited to meet you, Happy.
Thank you so much for having me on the show, Heather. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah. Well, you were saying that if you're into the genre, this is the book to read. Which genre are we talking about here?
Well, metaphysics, learning about the laws of the universe, how it all works, how intuition works, how inner wisdom works, how we're tapped into a world within us that has so much more information that we were ever told. So it's a little bit of everything. And I really wanted to create a classic. That was the intention behind it. Once it started writing itself, I noticed that this was going to be one of those books that teachers could recommend to their students, friends, people that liked the book would recommend it to friends. And it would be one of those things that just simplified the concept that has been so elusive for so many years. I think when people hear intuition, it's just this vague thing about a gut feeling. And it wasn't really supposed to be called Intuition Bible. It was supposed to be called Unleash Your Inner Wisdom. And the day I submitted it to the publishers to see if they'll like it, I just got a download that said you have to call it the Intuition Bible. And they said that was the thing that caught their eye. And then I had a contract a week later. So this book and the title and everything just kind of wrote itself. I can't take too much credit for it other than giving it the time to unfold.
That's amazing. Well, you were saying about open up to everything that's there. And I was listening to this really dorky song last night by a band called Symphony of Science. And it takes all these scientists, Richard Feynman, Carl Sagan, all these incredible scientists, and remixes their voice into this awesome song called We Are All Connected. But, you know, one of the things Richard Feynman says in it is you really have to take the time to pay attention to feel the magic, you know, that there's like all these waves floating around all over the room, you know, talking about all the things that are there that we don't see all the time. And I don't know why that's what came up for me when you were saying that, you know, to tap into all the things that are there. And I haven't spoken with a lot of people who've had a near-death experience, but I've spoken with some people about people who've had them before. And I know it's a really unique experience to go through that seems to give people some kind of perspective that the rest of us mere mortals don't have. How had that influenced your awareness?
Well, first of all, I think the reason that idea just popped in your head is because there is a chapter in the book when I talk about, think of all the radio signals and TV signals and satellite signals that are in your room right now. And until you have the device or tune into the right frequency, you're not even able to perceive them. And even if you're aware that there's all these signals. As soon as you get distracted by physical things, you forget that there's all these signals in the room. So I feel like that's where maybe you pick that up, which I love. And second, we'll go to the near death experience. Well, what I would like to call it is an awakening more than a near death experience, because that's usually what happens. Because a lot of people have near death experiences that they almost die and they don't have an awakening. And there are people who meditate their whole lives and one day they just have an epiphany or they just open up. So I think what I had was an awakening because it was because of failed suicide attempt. So most people, when they try to attempt suicide, they die. And that's what happens. So I just happened to have my awakening because one night I decided to go to sleep and I released all resistance to everything I was holding on to and just let myself go. And when you do that, your frequency rises and your openness to new frequencies and perspectives becomes more vast and you become more ripe. And when you do that, you tap into a new frequency. And usually, if you've let go of enough, which people do through meditation, you tap into the closest thing you can to source and you download as much perspectives. This is your own words. It's so funny because you're using my own words, which I love. You download more perspectives than you're able to see. And when you come back, because you've seen the world in a way that you'd never seen before, you were never the same again. And people could try to talk you out of it, but it's almost like you've seen a 3D version of something and everyone else is seeing it 2D and they're trying to explain to you something and you're just like, but no, you don't understand. You don't understand. So I went to sleep one person, very limited knowledge, still spiritual, very curious about death, not really depressed, but I was a 17-year-old. So how much knowledge could I have as a 17-year-old, despite the fact that I lived through a war and a divorce and immigration and a migration and all that stuff. But I went to sleep one person and I woke up someone completely new with more knowledge than I could ever think of. And it took me 2 years to flesh that out and write it into books that I never published. So that was the introduction to the idea that there's an inner world full of inner knowledge that we have access to. Now, that is amazing. It's a great personality shift. That's where my name Happy was born because it was like a tattoo for me. And I made it my legal last name, but I use it as my first name. So my children are the Happy twins. And I just learned the secret to happiness in 1995, and it was to see the world in a different way. Just change your perspective. You change the way you feel about things. You change your frequency. You change the way you live and the way people behave to you, at you. So your world completely changes, completely changes. And, at that time, everyone told me I was crazy and that I had just hallucinated something. But then years later, more teachers came forth and said the exact same thing. And I realized what they were teaching was what I had been writing. And it really did validate that original experience, although I was happy all the time. So that was enough proof to begin with.
Yeah, that's a lot to go through. You said you went to sleep one person and woke up, and you went through this experience of release. How did you do this? What did that look like when you went to bed doing this big release?
So when you go to sleep, detached from the outcome of tomorrow and detached from anything physical, you do release all the resistance that holds your energy down. Now, like I said, people attempt to do that during each meditation, and we encourage people to do that during meditation. But it doesn't happen on that huge level until you actually don't think you're going to ever wake up again. And, some people have out of body experiences during near death experiences, which just gives them a new perspective. And it's all about getting new perspective. But I didn't have any visual experiences. I did notice people that I had not completely gotten along with, those people's faces kept popping up. Like all the unresolved issues kept popping up, and I had to kind of forgive them and forgive myself in the process. So there was a lot of forgiving and letting go. And I remember those were the main things that popped up. And then I just remember being in a really blissful place, but it had no visuals that I can explain to you. But when I woke up the next day, the feeling was just intense. I even had precognition for about 3 seconds. Like I would see a door open and someone come through, and then I would look and the door would still be closed. And I would look again, and then the door would actually open and the person would walk through. But it was like everything made sense. It was like somebody showed me all the pieces of the puzzle and fit it together for me. And that's why I felt like a new person. Actually, I really thought I had died and someone really wise had taken over my body, but I didn't really understand the concept of release and tapping into higher vibrations yet. But we do that all the time. Every time you're joyful, you tap into a new vibration and then you have access to new thoughts that are very different than when you're unhappy, or feeling down.
Yeah. We do that through cleanses in Ayurveda. It's like you change your physiological state and it like changes your thoughts. But what I'm very curious about is, did you do this without drugs?
No, no, there was
Was it just pure your mind? Like, I'm making a decision to do this and
no. I wish I could just go to sleep like that for later when I'm ready to die. No, there was 100 pills, sleeping pills, and a bowl of spaghetti that were mixed together. And I ate most of it and went to sleep thinking I'd never wake up. And then I got a call from my mother from the other side of the world saying, "Hey, I had a dream that you weren't eating well." And I looked at the rest of the spaghetti, this bitter spaghetti, and I said, "Oh, shoot, I got to eat this for my mom, her last wish." So I ate it and kicked my gag reflexes in. And then I threw everything up and gave myself a stomach pump. But it had already absorbed enough in my body for me to pass out, but not enough to kill me. And actually, when I woke up, I felt amazing. I felt like I had a cleansing of some sort.
it sounds like you had some forces that were really keeping you here as well, right?
Yeah, and
So,
it put me on my path. That night put me on the mission that I'm on now.
yeah. Wow. I know, because in some ways you're like, you wish it didn't happen, but at the same time, it really improved things.
I mean, I'm really happy it happened. I just want to make sure that the people listening know that never try this, because if you do die, when you die, first of all, this is not a guaranteed thing. If you have the intention of an out of body experience or an awakening, then you're not releasing attachments and you're not detaching. And second, when you die, if you're trying to escape something, the universe has this beautiful way of bringing you back to where you started, just more exaggerated. So you get to learn the lesson you were supposed to learn. It's like when you have a relationship and you don't work out the issues, you end up with the same person again with more dramatic experiences. The universe really likes for you to expand and grow. So if you try to escape something, it will follow you.
That's really important. Thanks so much for saying that. And yeah, so regarding intuition, how do we know that something is intuition?
Well, there are different ways that intuition comes through for different people. Some people are very empathetic, they're empaths, they feel and they just have feelings. Some people are so logical that they're literally blind to intuition. I have twins, and one's one and the other one's the other. But first, I want to define the word intuition the way that I mean it, because I believe that all information that comes to you from anywhere other than the logical mind is intuition. It's inner wisdom. Now, like I said, I initially did not want to call the book the Intuition Bible because I thought the word intuition was very limiting, but I really loved how catchy the title was because that was supposed to be called Unleash Your Inner Wisdom. But I believe that your world, your body, has all this information, and it doesn't just stop at gut feelings and dreams and premonitions and clairvoyance and inner visions and stuff. It extends out to the outer world, which is also an extension of your body. And just like there's a cell in your body that's, doing its job right now, not knowing that it's you, we are also a cell in this galaxy or universe. I'm going to say galaxy because that's like our immediate body. So this galaxy is just easier to comprehend than saying universe. So this galaxy is one body. This earth is another part of the body. You are also a part of the body. So messages come to us through all these different avenues. But if it's not originating where your usual thoughts come from and it doesn't feel like your usual thoughts, that's what I call intuition or outer intuition. So for you, let's say that you're just like the least intuitive person in the world. I'm sorry, I don't mean to put you on the spot like that. It might show up as patterns in your life. Like the universe is telling you not to do this. This path you're taking is not aligned with your soul. So it'll keep showing the same people in your life over and over and over, or you'll keep getting into car accidents and getting a parking ticket or something, letting you know that something within you is off. Or it will keep opening doors for you to let you know that you're on your path. The whole point of tapping into intuition, whatever method you use, is so that you're aligned with your soul's path and that you are actually living the life that you're meant to live. So it's not like let me listen to my intuition just to see what it has to say. The point of inner wisdom is that it is designed for you by a part of you that knows more than you and is aware of your past, your present, and on some level, your future. And every decision that you're about to make, it knows the outcome. And it knows whether it's in alignment with what you want to do and who you want to be, or whether it's out of whack. And if you believe that, then your curiosity can lead you to a book like the Intuition Bible. And if the information that you're receiving is, because this is the first question everybody asks, if any information you're receiving, whether it's from something on TV, a friend, your inner voice, if it's making you feel empowered, giving you aha moments, it's making you feel more love in your heart, then that's the message you need to listen to. And that's the universe talking to you. But if it's making you afraid and constricted and making you feel like you don't want to get out of bed and your body's all tight and tense, then wherever that information is coming from, that's not good for you in general. So that didn't really answer your question, but I really did want to go into that because it was a deeper understanding of how important information is. But when you practice different exercises to understand the different ways intuition does talk to you, it becomes clearer and clearer where you know the difference.
Yeah, I definitely think you answered the question. And I'm curious, what are some of these exercises? So are you talking about tapping more into the subconscious?
Yes. So the subconscious is the gateway for all things unseen. So I have a chapter that describes every single source of knowledge that you have access to. And at the base level, because I wanted to make this book scientific and spiritual at the same time, I always say at the very, very least, you have to learn to tap into your subconscious mind, which receives about 11 million bits of data per second, but only lets you process about 160 something per second. So it deletes and distorts and stores about 11 million bits of data that doesn't think is relevant for you right now. There's all these inner noise, outer noise, all this stuff happening. And it knows if you're aware of all this stuff, your brain's going to pop. So it stores very valuable information that it just doesn't align with your belief system right now. So when you learn the language of the subconscious mind, even if you don't believe in the woo-woo and the spiritual stuff, you are able to tap into a wealth of information that you've been storing since birth that could help you as long as you learn the language of the subconscious mind. And everyone's subconscious mind talks to them differently. Some people, it talks to them through their dreams. Some people, it's their feelings. Some people get to hear voices, and some people get to see visions, and some people just have an inner knowing. Now, for me, I'm a claircognizant and a clairsentient, which for your listeners, claircognizant means you just get ideas downloaded in your brain, and clairsentient means you feel stuff, you feel energy. So you can feel things that other people might interpret differently. So me and you will encounter the same energy, and you might see something and I'll feel something. But first, you have to pay attention. So here's the thing. This is the most important part. Your intuition or your inner voice can never be louder than the outer senses. The outer senses, the 5 senses that we have, are designed for your survival. So they're designed to keep you alive. So intuition is not there for survival. It's there for thriving. Is survival a word? It's not, but I wish it was. Survival.
Thrival, like thrive and
Yeah,
survival.
yeah.
You
Like
can make it up.
survival.
You
It's
just
for
did
your
it.
survival.
You just made it up.
So you have your 5 senses keeping you alive, your instincts, which feel like gut feelings, keeping you alive, your fears and anxieties and those things that are still on the primal animal level version of you, that might feel like intuition for some people because it's keeping them safe, keeping them in the comfort zone. But when I talk about intuition, the inner voice, it's a whisper. It's a whisper, and it's something that is designed to only be heard when you quiet down the other senses. And that's how it's fine tuned, because it can't be louder. Because if it's louder, there might be a tiger about to eat you and you might miss it because you're too busy trying to think these beautiful ethereal thoughts. So that's why intuition has to be quiet. And that's why it requires time and practice. With enough practice, it becomes loud enough to be able to hear while you're acknowledging your other senses. So, one of my favorite exercises, and I'll teach you an exercise right now that only works on about 75% of people based on my workshops. So, when I do this with my twins, it only works on one of them. So, 1 out of 2. So, what you do is you practice how your subconscious talks to you. So, one of it is, first of all, you have to close your eyes, because when you close your eyes, you're shutting off one of the loudest outer senses. So now your brain can slow down. Then you scan your upper body from your chest to your pelvis. Just feel it and quiet your breathing, slow down your breathing, just be more still. Then ask yourself a question that you know for sure to be a yes. Like, am I living on planet Earth right now, or is my name what it is right now? You ask the question and you check for any sensation in the body. Now, for some people, it might be somewhere outside of the area I described, but for most people, it's in that area. Unless they do Reiki or something, it might be in their hands. So you ask another yes question for you. Do I have a 7.5-year-old son? And you check for a feeling. Now, you do that with a few more questions, and then you kind of shake it off and pretend you're smelling popcorn or something completely irrelevant. Then you do the same thing with a no question. You say, do I have a 7.5-year-old daughter? Am I on the moon right now? Questions that you know to be no. Am I on an airplane right now? Now, I want you to open your eyes and tell me if you felt anything. You might say yes, you might say no. Were you one
Oh
of the
yeah, I definitely felt things. I'm dealing with some pain in my back today, so I was having to fight that, right? Which is why they always say that the yogis have to like work through their body before they can meditate. All right. So I felt the yes questions in my back, body, and the back of my head. And
Mhm.
then I felt the no questions more sort of in the front body
Okay.
as a blocking.
But you did notice there was a difference in that. So when you practice that for a while, especially when your back's not hurting, because any kind of physical ailment, healing, any kind of detoxifying, anything that your body's going through will color the intuitive message or its location. And
Hmm.
that's a chapter in my book called Misinterpretation and Blockages.
Perfect.
I cover everything in this book. I mean, I've left no stone unturned. And so you want to practice that. But what I would normally do if I was going to check that, I would just sit with my body in the pain area and pay attention to that for a while until it dissipates, because pain is usually just a crying part of your body that really wants attention. So when I work with my clients, I let them do that until that pain goes away. And then I do the test that I just did. And then you do it so many times that after a while, you might be about to make a right or a left turn, and then you'll get the feeling. And you won't even have to check or even take the time to check. So it just happens and you recognize it. And it's like adding an extra source of information to your life. Now, I'm a prophetic dreamer. So that means I dream stuff months in advance. The birth of my child was shown to me in 2008, and I was a gay guy with no intention of having a child, and I met my son, and sure enough, a year and a half later I had my son. And then the death of my son was shown to me 4.5 years later, and his mother 2.5 months before they were died, sorry. And then the morning before the car accident happened, which took my son away. And for me, it was at first a sick joke. I was like, why would you make me have this kid if you're going to take him away? And I knew it came from a loving source. And first of all, my credentials as a prophetic dreamer just went through the roof as soon as I had those dreams. And everyone's like, because I told everyone 2 people are going to die. I was like, I had another dream. And then when they die, I knew I had a connection with them. So these are the perks of tapping into your inner wisdom. Then all of a sudden that night, so I had a daughter. I adopted his sister, who was 2.5 at the time. And she was in the car. She didn't die. And she was in critical care. We didn't know if she was going to make it. So that night, I took some Tylenol PM, not to die, to try to talk to my son. And he showed up and he's like, Daddy, I'm okay. And he was hanging out with this African kid, which I'm convinced is the soul of my South African children. I don't know why there was an African kid there. And although he was Black, my children are white. I just feel like that was my representation of him hanging out with them. So aside from that, he said, Faith is going to be okay. She's going to make it. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about her. We'll be fine. And I'm fine. And then every night or every other night, he would show up and give me new messages and help me through the grieving process. And that was something no one else in the family had, because I was the one who had trained myself to do all this stuff. So I wasn't born like this. My family are prophetic dreamers, but I'm only one in the family that's trained myself to hone these skills. And so I would ask questions. I would say, why did you die? Why did your mom die? I would ask her, why did you die? And they would give me real answers. And they would be satisfying answers. And it's hard to have a satisfying answer for your son's death. And then immediately he started saying, you're having another kid. And I said, no way. There's no way I'm having another kid. I am broke. I just got into UCLA that I only started to go to because I had children. And now you took away my, immortality is what it was. And now I'm in school. I have to get these grades and I have no money for a surrogate or a donor. And he kept showing me this curly haired baby and this straight haired baby that I thought was him, and told me it's time. And money just showed up out of the blue. It was $100,000. And a year and a half later, my twins were born. And of course, one's curly haired, one's straight hair. So the life that I live now, I owe to my inner voice. And I would have never been here had I not paid attention and followed the signs.
Mm-hmm.
And I would have been living a shadow. First of all, if I was grieving, I would be like one of the other parents that are grieving. They would be miserable. I teach happiness for a living. I met people that had lost their kids like 30 years ago, and they were just like, I'm still so miserable. And I'm like, I don't want to be you.
Mm-hmm.
And I still communicate with my son. I love communicating with my son, but it's just more of a need to know basis, or there's a need base as opposed to okay, I just want to see you tonight, There has
Yeah.
to be a desire that's stronger than just, I just want to talk to you.
Right. Just intense grief. I'm curious. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. And I think it's hard. I've actually had some prophetic dreams, and I didn't know that that was actually a thing. But I think it's hard. I don't consider myself an expert in the subconscious by any means, but it feels difficult when you have these kinds of dreams to know which ones might actually lead to an actual thing, because some of them are quite nonsensical and not so accurate or literal.
Most of them, actually.
Yeah. I mean, I guess sometimes it's like, how do you know the ones that are going to actually manifest? Like, do you know it? Because I feel like I haven't really understood it until the thing occurs. And then I'm like, oh my God, I had a dream about that. I had a dream about my son a year and a half before I had him,
Isn't that
too.
wonderful?
Yeah.
That's, your soul's connecting, and then him introducing himself to you, or someone introducing you to, and then him coming to fruition. So here's the thing. Luckily, I wrote a whole chapter on it, but I can give you the cliff notes. First of all, the first level of dreaming is your subconscious is clearing out clutter and categorizing stuff and a filing cabinet for future reference. So that's where the nonsensical stuff is all over the place. It's everywhere. You have to have that every single night. And then the next level is also previews of how you're doing vibrationally. So this is not so much a prophetic dream, but it is a real way to get insight on your energetic frequency. So if you're having dreams where you're feeling defeated or upset or happy, or if you keep losing or winning or whatever that dominant emotion is, that's your dominant emotion in real life. And if you keep that up, you're going to have some bad stuff happen or great stuff happen. It's just a preview. especially for people who don't pay attention to their emotions during their waking hours, they get more of those dreams. Then, those are two levels of dreams. Then we have the next dimensional dreams. Your soul always leaves your body every time you go to sleep. So you wake up back into the other dimension, wherever it is you go when you die, every single night. And then you go back to sleep and when you wake up, kind of like a reverse kind of thing. But when you go to the other dimensional world, you're going into a world of, I would say, 3D color, as like you would think of a television show or something. And then you get to experience life in this 3D wonderful world. And then you have to wake up and translate it into the world of radio, which is this world, which means the color's gone, the visions are gone, everything's gone. So it gets very distorted. But those versions of the dreams will have a quality about them and a knowing about them that your subconscious has to translate in the best way that it knows how. So when you wake up in the 2D world, you will get a sense of it. So I always say, start to journal if you want to be a prophetic dreamer. You have to journal and color code your journals. So you color code the stuff that felt nonsensical. You color code the ones that was full of love. You just color code them based on the way it felt. And you also write down the description of what you were experiencing. Then at the same time, you also journal your actual day at the end of the night. So one journal is in the morning and one journal is at night. And you color code those two. The reason I say color code is that it's easier to find correlations in color than try to read all that crap. One day you'll just be able to put in chat GPT and then say, find the correlations, you know? But for now, I mean, you probably can do that now, but I don't think it has enough memory to be able to do that at the moment, unless you probably have like super duper 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 version of it. But what I do is color coding. It's fun. It's a fun game. I say color code for 6 months and have fun. Journal every day. Just see how much your life improves when you journal, because journaling has so many great qualities. And that's another chapter in the book. But that's a great way to figure it out. And you notice, hey, when I have that knowing, or when I have that person that shows in my dream, a month and a half later, this event happens, and it keeps happening over and over and over again. For example, I have a old boss from the 90s that when she shows up, 2 months later, somebody dies. And she's my death avatar. And it's really comforting because, first of all, most people say, I don't want to know if someone's going to die. But when you know that something happens on an energetic level first, you don't think of it as a tragedy in the same way. Or when I dreamt that my cousin's wife was pregnant, I was like, you're getting pregnant? She's like, no, I'm not. And then 2 months later, she's like, I'm pregnant, you know? So you kind of get to know your dreams. And there are times where your mind is so busy that all you have time when you sleep is to process that nonsensical stuff. And there is no prophecy to be had, nothing, you know? And so sometimes you're not going to full REM, but that's why there are so many different ways to tap into your inner wisdom. Like for me, it's sometimes I'm just lost as a single parent of twin boys. And I just use a pendulum. I'm like, what the hell am I supposed to do right now? So I use a pendulum. Pendulum is like a little string with something attached to it. But the micro muscles, if you promise not to move your arm, the micro muscles in between your fingers will move the pendulum in different directions. And as long as you don't cheat, it says yes or no, you can start asking more questions. And you want to ask more questions like, is this in alignment with what I'm supposed to be doing? Don't start asking questions and am I going to meet my husband in 2 weeks or stuff like that.
Not so specific.
Well, predictive questions are good, but only if you're tapped into different dimensions that defy time and space. And I teach that. But most of the time, you're just tapped into your subconscious, which is rooted into this world. It's like asking ChatGPT for something, saying, hey, is this a good decision for me? And it's using all the database that it has, this giant database to give you answers. But when you learn to tap into new frequencies and you feel that you're tapped into a new frequency, ask any question that you want and get any answer that you want. Like, am I going to die alone is everyone's question. And I always say 50% of the time, yes. No, because everyone dies. Like most people die alone eventually.
All right. So regarding the conclusion aspect of this, right? Like, so we feel something, we intuit something, and then sometimes we jump to turning it then into a conclusion. I've definitely seen some of my friends who like tap into this come to a lot of very confused conclusions. So, could you address that and like how we can avoid coming to faulty conclusions in this process?
Can I cheat and pull my book out?
Yes.
Because there's a really cool chapter called Misinterpretation. And
Mm,
misinterpretation is primarily based on conclusions that people make, because you could have an underlying agenda. I don't want to miss anything. If you have an underlying agenda, you really want something to be a certain outcome. Doesn't matter what intuitive message you get, you're going to color it. I have a great saying that I received. It said, downloaded, it said, the sky is only blue because of the quality of the Earth's atmosphere. The same sunlight scattered in a different atmosphere would create different colored skies. So on another planet, they could have daytime that's a different color. So we color everything based on our own qualities and intentions and agendas. So you have to be aware if you have an underlying agenda, if you are invested in a particular outcome to the extent that you're not willing to accept any information that is contrary to that. You know, if you know someone who's really in love with someone and there's so many red flags, and they could be smacked in the head with 1,000 signs and they just can't see it, including their best friend saying, hey, you dumbass, you need to break up with this person. Am I overly preoccupied with someone or something? That's a way we color things. Am I experiencing an overwhelming amount of emotions, like making it difficult to be objective? Like, am I really sad right now or scared right now or trying to be too concerned about someone right now or overprotective right now? Am I overly exhausted? If you're overly exhausted, you're not going to get clear messages. Are your hormones out of balance? That's a huge one, especially for women, because you do have more fluctuations in your hormones. Men do too. Or if you're detoxing, are you hungover? Are you detoxing chemicals? Like, you're not going to get the same messages. Are you hangry? That's a huge one. Or, if you're trying to do gut feeling stuff, are you bloated or are you having like indigestion issues? There's so many different things. There's emotional pain, there's physical pain, there's healing. And healing is anything from, just getting a cut all the way to, or anything all the way to the full recovery of it. And then there's also, am I feeling unsafe and insecure? Like, these are the type of questions that you have to ask yourself and kind of check off whenever you're trying to come to a conclusion. And there are a lot of questions. And I really did. It's the first time I've gone into the book with someone on a show, but I thought that was a really important question. And those are some examples of when you do come to false conclusions. Did that make sense?
yeah, for sure. And I think it's just people don't seem to have an easy time recognizing when they're out of balance too, right? So that even that is a barrier.
That's why this is more of a luxury book as opposed to an essential. I mean, it is an
Mhm.
essential for me, but it's for people who really want to improve their lives and go to the next level. The people who are not even taking time to be aware of themselves are not even going to be turned on by this book. They're going to look at this Bible and probably feel the same way I feel when I look at the other Bible. I had this vision of opening the other Bible and it would say, listen to me. These are the rules of life. And if you don't, you'll go to hell. And then I had a vision of me opening this book and it says, listen to yourself and live heaven on earth. And
Mm,
that was what was the difference. Although I do believe the Bible has a lot of wonderful things to say. And I love religion because it does ground people and keep people in check. And it does connect people to something greater. But I think we've lost the idea that we are God in human form and we have access to all that is because we are creators.
And it's tricky because the part that we're mostly aware of is our thoughts and things that are kind of more in the conscious mind realm. So, what you're talking about, the ways to access the subconscious, they don't always come through in like a tangible and rational and concrete way, which is what we're operating in the world all the time. So it can be very easy to just dismiss it and go, oh, I'm crazy, or that was crazy, or whatever. But it's like a different language that your body's speaking.
Absolutely. And I do talk about that. And I mentioned that the logical mind is intuitive's worst enemy, or the intuitive mind's worst enemy, because the logical mind wants everything to be tangible and quantifiable with proof. And the intuition aspect of you, the intuitive mind, is the opposite. It works completely different. It has no rules. It talks in symbols, symbolism, colors, pictures, paintings, random stuff, feelings. And when you practice enough to listen to the intuitive mind, then it becomes proof itself so that the logical mind can jump on board. It's like learning the piano, for example. In the beginning, when you're trying to play, it just makes no sense and just noises, and you feel like your left hand doesn't work and you're just not coordinated enough. And then when you practice long enough, all of a sudden you can just put your hand on the keyboard and it'll just play a song itself, and it's already in your system. And in the beginning, if somebody would have told you that just because you couldn't play piano the very first time you sat in front of one, and you believe them, you would never play the piano again. And this is the same thing. Don't expect to just tap into your inner wisdom overnight. It's something that first you have to have the desire, and you have to know that, wait, I can have a friend that's within me that can help me through every aspect of my life because its agenda is my well-being. And once you do that, once you have that desire, then you have to put in the work. If you don't put in the work, it's going to disappear. I remember in the Kabbalah, it said something like spirituality is like an escalator that's going down, and you can't continuously have to keep stepping up on it if you want to get to the next level. And the second you stop working, it goes back down again. Now, fortunately, spirituality and intuition are different, because intuitive muscles are things that once you develop them, you have them. But for me, for example, clairvoyance, which means inner vision, is not my strong suit. But when my grandmother died, because I wasn't listening to my dreams and I saw her die in my dream, and because I just was in denial about it, the moment she died, or I think 20 minutes or an hour before she died, I just slightly closed my eyes and saw this bird fall out of the sky and flap its wings and die in front of me. That was a clairvoyant moment. So because I wasn't listening to the other signs, and because I identify as an intuitive, my other senses had to kick in, because they were like, hey, you're blind right now. So we're going to tell you grandma's dying on the other side of the world. Go prep yourself.
Yeah.
I keep talking about death, but I think for me, like,
No,
death
it's
is so
okay.
dramatic.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's a lot of death going on in the world right now, so it's helpful to talk about.
And a lot of birth. And I think we need to just normalize that. Just there are different chapters. But I get to just, more dramatic stuff, of course, brings more dramatic messages.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I've really enjoyed our conversation today. And I just started reading the Red Book, the Carl Jung, the Red Book. And, it's funny because I studied psych in undergrad, and then I was like, no, this just like isn't enough. And I ended up studying Ayurveda after that. And I do recognize the benefit of tapping into the subconscious, especially for people who are like extremely heady and smart and rational and to kind of like round themselves out as a human. I'm not smart. I can't say I'm smart, but I'm very rational and.
And smart. Don't ever say that.
Because I have a lot of people in my life who are way smarter than me.
Yeah, but that's just a bunch of BS. Sorry, I had to cut you off on that one.
Oh,
I have children. One's like, I'm not smart. I'm like, you are so smart. You are conducting a podcast out of the blue and coming up to perfect questions. A non-smart person could not do that.
thank you so much. Yeah, it is really cool to have kids and see how their psychology is developing, and to have the opportunity to reprogram something that they're beginning to believe is super, super cool.
It's amazing. I mean, they're my number one teachers. And I have a 18-year-old who couldn't give a crap about any of the stuff that I teach. I'm like, are you going to read the book? She's like, nope. I said, you're in it. She's like, I don't care. I said, okay. But my little ones are like trying to understand it. It's just fascinating. I know that our time is pretty much up, but I do want to say one thing. The reason I talked about the subconscious was because the left brain people can wrap their head around it. But I do want to add this thing. If anyone can look at the cover of the book, there's a picture of a tree that you can't see because this is audio only, and I will show it to you so you can see it. So the roots of the tree, people ask me, how do we connect to the inner world? And what does it mean that we're all one? And I've heard it so many times, it just sounds like a bunch of BS. So I created this analogy, and it just happens to be a tree, like the tree of life. And I explain it like this: the root of the tree is God in its pure form. The trunk, as it becomes singly directed and direct into one direction, is God intending on a physical existence, creating a physical world. As the trunk splits into the bigger branches, those are the archangels, the angels with very specific ideas of how they're going to improve this tree. And then as branches get smaller, those are the collective consciousnesses, collective souls that have similar intentions. And as the branches get even smaller and smaller, those are your higher selves and your soul. And the part of you that exists on this planet are the leaves. You grow out of those little tiny branches. You know you have a finite life. You come here to live and to die, but nothing ever goes wrong because the tree lost its leaves, because brand new leaves will come out of the same soul/branch. And when you go and try to just tap into your subconscious, you're tapping into the subconscious of the leaf. And it still has, a very singular perspective. So a tree on one side will have a leaf on one side will have a complete different perspective than the leaf on the other side. That's why we have so much divisiveness in this country, for example. But when you go within, go past the subconscious, go into the actual branches and tap into the whole of the tree, you can understand the perspective of not just all the other leaves, but also the whole tree, because you are the tree. You're just one tiny leaf on that tree. And if you were not connected to that tree, you would be dead, because the second you pluck that leaf off a tree, it will die. It doesn't have the nutrients anymore. So the point of this book is to first learn how to communicate with the subconscious, so you know how you're connected and how to communicate. Then tap into the tree. Tap into the part of you that is connected to all of you, to the universe, to everything. And if you can muster up that frequency, you have access to that knowledge. And the sky is the limit.
Thank you so much for that. Yeah. Awesome. And tell everybody how to find your book and connect with you.
So the Intuition Bible, How and Why to Tap into Your Inner Wisdom, and my other book called The Charisma Within, 15 Steps to Enhance Your Inner Magnetism, are all available on Amazon, Audible, on anywhere actually books are sold. So all you got to do is ask for it, and go to happyinsights.net for any of my own personal information, or go to my Instagram, which is Happy Insights Official, and watch daily videos of little helping videos to help you go through your life.
Well, I'm so thrilled to read your book more and learn more about your work and stay connected. And I'm super grateful to New World Library for connecting us, and look forward to connecting in the future.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, totally. If you are embarking on a fertility journey and are ready to have your mind blown about what your body is really capable of and how it's impacted by the environment, then check out my book, The Ayurvedic Guide to Fertility. You can actually download the introduction to the book for free on my website at heathergrzych.com. That's Heather, GRZYCH.com. Read the intro for free and then buy the rest of this fertility enlightening book pretty much anywhere books are sold. You want a full human experience when you seek a healthcare provider, and you don't want 15 minutes with someone who can't even try to find out the root cause of things because they're so overwhelmed themselves. You have a body, a mind, a heart, and dare I say it, even emotions. You're not crazy. Everything does affect you, and it's possible to feel better if you have the support you need. Set up an appointment with me to heal naturally. Go to heathergrzych.com. That's Heather, GRZYCH.com. Thank you for tuning in and dropping in with us today. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. I really want to hear your feedback. To learn more about my work, visit heathergrzych.com. That's Heather, GRZYCH.com. And meet me here next time on The Wisdom of the Body.